Hi, and welcome to Maine Challenge. You may be surprised to learn, or maybe not, that Central Maine Power, Maine's largest electricity provider, ranks dead last in the nation for customer satisfaction. And Versant, another Maine provider, is only 2 places above that. CMP holds the national record for the least reliable service with the most frequent and longest outages. Frequent and lengthy power outages, astronomical billing errors, misinformation regarding the cost of clean energy. It's no wonder we ratepayers have lost patience. But there is hope. There is a group of citizens and lawmakers who have an idea to transform the management of Maine's electrical grid, and it has CMP and Versant on the defensive. Today, I'm talking with Senators Rick Bennett and Senator Stacy Brenner, both state senators, awesome public servants, about Pine Tree Power and the proposal that they have to transform the future control of Maine's electricity and put it in people's hands. So thank you both so much for being with us. I am thrilled to see you both, and I'm grateful for the work that you do and your service in these crazy pandemic days. It's not that easy to be a senator or a public servant, so thank you, thank you, thank you. So it's great to see you both.
Good to see you, Betsy.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Thank you, Betsy.
So let's just talk a little bit. First, let me just start, Stacy, with you for a minute. So what got you interested in this? Why is this a big deal? I mean, it is a very big deal, but why is it a big deal? And what do you think, what's the problem we're trying to correct?
Well, I think that the ultimate goal here is to try to decrease the profit motive for CMP and Versant and put the power utility into the hands of the ratepayers so that we can choose our own board and be accountable only to us. We can meet our goals for clean energy independence, lower costs, set better reliability, and hopefully improve our internet by being able to use these poles for our broadband expansion.
So Rick, and how about you? What got you excited about this and thinking this is a really good idea?
Yeah, well, first of all, like any legislator, I've heard from my constituents about the repeated multi-year failings of my utility, which is CMP over here. I mean, the ownership model which underlies CMP and Versant doesn't make any sense. They're investor-owned utilities, but making it worse is that Versant is owned by a foreign government, and CMP is ultimately owned by a foreign corporation based in Spain. And these distant investors and shareholders have no connection to us as customers and ratepayers, and their motives are completely misaligned with ours. And I think that's shown in repeated failures that you recounted at the top of the program. I mean, the longest outages, the worst reliability. Not only does CMP rate worse than the country, one of the people that rates slightly better is Pacific Gas and Electric, who admitted to killing over 80 people in California. So this is a really people in my district, they, of all political stripes, know that this is not working and they want it fixed. And I think getting the ownership closest to them is the most important part of the solution.
So isn't that the fundamental issue? One of the fundamental issues, I know there's many, but one of the fundamental issues is that, so when you have any corporation or foreign corporations, they're managing the electrical grid to meet the needs of their investors, not the needs of the people. And electricity isn't like a thing you can sort of have or not have, it's sort of something that we all count on. And so it really, Stacy, you said it would switch that, who they're responsible to the ratepayers and to us. So describe a little bit, if you would, about how it's going to work, because it seems overwhelming, I think, for most people.
Right. So right now, CMP is owned by Avangrid. The parent company for Avangrid is Iberdrola, which is a Spanish-owned, publicly traded company. The Versant power company is owned by the city of Calgary. So both are foreign-owned, and our goal is to transition that ownership to a cooperative model owned by the ratepayers and governed by an elected board. Ideally, what that does is it removes the profit motive and it puts the control of this very important resource right in the hands of the users of the resource.
So, Rick, what do you say to people who say, oh my gosh, this is a state run, this means the state's going to take it over, this is socialism? You know, I know we've all heard some of the arguments against it, including CMPs, but what do you say to those folks?
Well, there's a lot of misinformation, mischaracterization of this proposal out there. First, this is not about government taking over. This is, if you read the statute, which is available easily online, it's about us facilitating the move from this failed ownership to a new model, which is more like a cooperative. It's a consumer-owned utility. And this is not about government control of it. In fact, these businesses are they're telephone poles and transformers and wires. Okay, they are a natural monopoly, and they are much better run locally, close to their consumers. So if you look, as Stacy was saying, at the board of directors, there would be 7 elected members from different corners of the state. And then there would be 4 additional directors chosen by those 7. These are not people who are appointed by the governor. They're not people who are appointed by the legislature. These are independently elected directors. They will then hire a professional management team to replace the, frankly, incompetent people that are currently running the utilities. And but we'll keep the workforce intact. The people that are currently working will not lose their jobs. It's not about, they're doing their jobs. They're just very badly managed and badly led. So the important thing is that what we're changing out here is the ownership, and we're making that ownership more indirectly responsible to the people who these utilities serve.
So that, you know, it just makes sense, right? It just makes this thing that's so important to all of us, right? That what people are watching us on, the viewers of Maine Challenge, are using electricity. We're using electricity to record the program. So what's the biggest opposition? I mean, why? I can't imagine that any citizen would say, oh, no, we really want this to stay in the hands of those foreign governments. We really want to keep paying those rates. And also, talking about, Maine has some consumer-owned utilities already, right?
Yeah, there's 9 consumer-owned utilities in Maine, and nationally, there are 49 million people in 49 states that have their power through consumer-owned utilities. So it's not a new concept. And 2 of the examples that I think are the most interesting are Winter Park, Florida, and the Long Island Power Authority. Both are examples of consumer-owned utilities that purchased the utility from a for-profit company in order to make that transition. So it's a model that exists. The pathway to get there exists. There's track that's laid out for us to follow. Have been mistakes, and we have an opportunity to correct some of those in the pathway that we take. This will be a vote that'll be taken sometime this week in the committee. It'll hit the floor of the House and Senate, and we'll vote on it. And then it will go to the voters in November on the ballot. So everybody gets a chance to have a voice in this experience. And we really think that when it hits the ballot, it's going to be pretty remarkable. As far as the opposition, I mean, the opposition is there's a lot of profit to be lost when the utility is no longer in the hands of these 2 companies. So, you know, they're afraid of what it means to not have that money in their pockets.
Yeah, no. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. I mean, if you look at the public hearing, it's pretty clear what the opposition is. Okay, there were 70 plus, between 70 and 80 people who spoke eloquently in favor of this legislation. There were, I think, 11 opponents, all but one of whom were on the payroll or lobbying for one of the 2 incumbents here. So this is really about this. I mean, the fact is that I've just been seeing the streams of information that are advertising on social media and whatnot. It's all mischaracterization. Yeah. Because they need to start with trying to define this as something that it's not in order to have a chance of beating it back. So the opposition is coming from mischaracterization, fraud, and the profit. And if I just might put a finer point on the profit, I mean, these are, again, natural monopolies, and they have a built-in rate of return on equity of 8 to 14%. That will be replaced in this new model with very, very low debt, which may be 2%, 2.5%, basically like municipal bond level kind of debt. And so that's really the difference is do we want to be paying as ratepayers for all these built-in profits for a failed governance and a failed management, or do we bring the management and the governance back close to home and pay much lower rates for the cost of capital?
So let's talk about the cost for a second, because I mean, that's one of the things. One of the things that I can't believe is the number of mailers and the advertising by these for-profit companies already. And I think it gets mixed up with the corridor, the CMP corridor. You know, it's all intertwined. And but one of the things is that this is going to be so expensive for us to buy. I think $9 billion and bonded over 30 years, right? Something like that. Can you talk a little bit about the finance? Because that's going to be, I think, as a layperson, you know, to say, woo, that feels like a lot of money. So, but I talk about how that all works out, because I know it does, but just tell us about how that does work out.
Well, I will say, first of all, I mean, the different numbers are being bandied about. Yeah. CMP says, oh, you're going to have to pay $13 billion for us. Well, the book value that they carry on is the company is more like $4 billion. And the truth is that these companies operate under a franchise, a monopoly franchise that is literally given to them by the state of Maine. It is ours to take away. And the front part of the bill actually says that when such conditions of lack of performance prevail, and they're spelled out in the bill, then that utility has lost its right as a franchise. So it would require then the transfer of those assets, and that would be subject to negotiation. The money would come from not state taxpayers. It would come from revenue bonds that are very common in developing any sort of utility. And those revenue bonds would be very low rate, and that money would go toward the purchase price.
Okay, great. And isn't it true, Stacy, that over time in these other places in the country, and even in Maine, where they co-ops, where people own the power companies, that they earn back that money and then turn it around relatively quickly?
Yeah, if you look at the Long Island Power Authority, there was a 20% decrease pretty shortly after the purchase of the utility by the ratepayers in terms of savings. So I think the return is guaranteed, close to guaranteed.
Yeah,
and we've seen that reflected in Maine as well, because the consumer-owned utilities that Stacy spoke about in Maine are charged like 58% less for the T&D cost, the rate, that side of the electricity, than Versant and CMP do. So those are real numbers. They have real meaning to Maine ratepayers.
And that's right here in the state.
Yeah, right, which is awesome. And you know, I keep thinking about this this is a tangent, but my grandfather lived on North Haven Island, and we were at the narrowest point of the island, and they were trying to lay a cable across, and they needed to get to Vinyl Haven, and they needed a place to go through. And my grandfather said, sure, you know, just you can go through here. And I remember people saying, what are you doing, letting them do this? And he said, this is for us. This is for people. We all need electricity. None of us want to live without electricity. So it's just that sort of idea that this is not, shouldn't be a for-profit, shouldn't be a thing. This is a necessity that we have. So right. I want to talk for a second about renewable energy, because that gets mixed in, I think it gets bandied about, by CMP. But I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, that one of the issues a couple years ago was that CMP would not accept people's excess power from their solar, if they generated enough power or more power, they had to pay to have CMP put this on the grid or allow them to use it on the grid, when this should have been easy to go on and that would have helped lower costs. Is that accurate? And would this actually help with the transfer or the moving of renewable energy?
Well, I think that the legislature did the work that was needed to fix that problem with the net metering.
Yes, right. Yeah.
There are still ratepayers who are producing more than they consume with their solar panels. For example, I have solar panels for my business. We were caught up in a situation where our bill was demonstrating a higher use than was actually happening. So the system is built based on that higher use. So it's bigger than the amount of energy that the business consumes. So kind of a unique problem, right? But we have more power than we need, and so we have a lot of credits currently with CMP. So our answer to that problem is to try to electrify everything we can on the farm in terms of the workings of our equipment.
Yeah.
But in terms of addressing that issue on a larger scale for the ratepayers of Maine, I think it's about guaranteeing that there's a commitment to decarbonizing our power source so that our grid is clean as can be.
Yeah. Wow.
Part of the problem, and people may recall the last few months, this issue being in the newspaper. One of the failures of CMP, for example, is that they're just not investing for the future. And we all know that we're going to have a heavily electrified future. Everything is going to be electric. And that means that we're going to have a lot of small scale generation, like we're seeing in Maine, where all these solar farms springing up everywhere.
Yeah.
CMP knew that this was coming, and yet they signed contracts with people who were putting in these solar farms. And these are businesses, these are people investing real money into major projects. And CMP was saying, okay, your costs are going to be $250,000 for your interconnect to the grid. Suddenly, they sent out letters to all of those developers this past January saying that the costs are going to be 2, 3, 4 times the amount that they had already agreed to, which completely destroyed these business models and that these folks were putting forward and real investments in the ground. But that problem was walked back later by CMP top brass. They blame middle management. But this is sort of emblematic of the fact that CMP was built for electrons flowing in one direction. The future is about electrons flowing in multiple directions, and they have not invested into that future because they haven't been incentivized under the current financial model to do so. And this will be fixed by this consumer-owned model.
And I think with everything changing so fast in terms of power generation and, as you say, electrifying things and electric cars and stuff, this is going to be, we're going to need a company or a grid that is responsive to what the changes in technology and is not, it's not that giant sucking sound of the first, again, as you said early on, the first responsibility of these private corporations is to their shareholders. And, shareholders are interested usually in short-term gain, not in investment over time, to make sure that something's going to work out 20 years later. And so it just seems like this makes a financial sense and energy sense and economic sense, right?
Yeah, it's a future-proof grid that Maine owns, Maine ratepayers own. We control, and we have the ability to decide the direction that it goes in. So definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I love that, the future-proof grid. That's awesome. So let's talk for a second about where this is. I know they had the public hearing. I watched a lot of that. It was very impressive testimony. And as you said, the opposition was predictable. How about that? Because my guess is it's going to be hard to find rank and file people, just normal people saying, "Oh no, we like it the way it is." So as you said, Stacy, it's going to pass the legislature. It has to go through the legislature. What do you think? What does it look like coming out of committee? What are the kind of votes that are coming out of committee? Do you think it's going to pass the House and Senate? And then it doesn't go through the governor because you're putting it directly out to referendum, right?
No, it does.
It will.
Oh, it does go. Oh, it does. Okay. I thought it got to bypass her with a referendum, but okay. So what do you think? How does it look?
Well, I will just start by saying that Representative Seth Berry, the prime sponsor of the bill, really has been working on this tirelessly for a long time. Mm-hmm. And the co-sponsorship on the bill, I think, is indicative of the kind of support that that is there for this measure. There are 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans from each of the House and the Senate who are co-sponsors of the bill, plus the tribal representative who's an independent. I have a lot of hope that the bill is going to have a favorable vote out of committee. They may make a couple of amendments to it, one of which is to add on the referendum clause, which was intended. Mm-hmm. That will then go to the House and Senate. We're going to have a very rushed schedule over the next 3 weeks. Yes. But I expect this bill has got a good likelihood of landing on the governor's desk because, and I think that she would probably tend to sign it because it does leave the ultimate decision up to the people. And there'll be a spirited and vigorous public debate over this. Mm-hmm. Millions of dollars will be spent, particularly by the incumbents, by Versant and CMP. But I think at the end of the day, common sense, as it usually does in Maine elections, will prevail.
Stacy, are you worried about the amount of money that they have to mount a campaign once it gets out to referendum?
Oh, definitely. I've already received one interest phone call from a survey this morning when I was online just getting ready for our conversation. They're already spending money to make sure that their website appears in the ad cycle above our Power, which is the advocacy group for the movement for Maine. Yeah. So I think that's pretty remarkable just right off the bat. I mean, they're already working hard. They're already lobbying legislators. It's going to be fascinating, right? I mean, this is a true grassroots, bold, audacious idea that has the capacity to take root and really grow. And it's not a new conversation. We've been talking about it for a couple of years. And I think it's going to be exciting for it to land in the ballot box for voters.
Yeah. And I think, as you said, Rick, I think, Mainers are pretty smart. And I think common sense prevails. And as I've been trying to tease out of you, and I think we can't get to it because there isn't any rational, based on fact, reason that the system that we have should continue, right? So they're going to have to distort the facts. They're going to have to make us think about something else. I don't know what, I mean, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think ultimately, if we're talking about individual ratepayers, it comes down to fear of change.
Right.
Yeah. But I think we can overcome that.
Yeah. I feel like, one thing maybe in the favor of this is that people I think are ready for some bold changes, yes, across the board. I think, I don't know about you, but I think that this pandemic has made us all sort of figure out, okay, what's important, what matters, where is control, how did it get so out of whack, how are we out of balance? And maybe that's going to help us, Rick. I don't know. What do you think?
I absolutely think you're right, Betsy. This is a time when everybody's re-examining everything, but they're doing it kind of from the ground up within their soul, really. Like, what is really important to me? Mm-hmm. And people want more control, right? They want more control of their lives. They're tired of the usual platitudes. They're tired of being told how to think. And I'm very encouraged by the up and coming generations, like my kids' generation. Yeah. These are free thinking people who don't take any guff from anybody. They don't, and I think that the world is moving in that direction. It's accelerated because of the pandemic, but I definitely think that this whole initiative goes with others that are, as Stacy said, bold and audacious to people of our generation, but a common sense to people of the next generation.
Yeah, right.
And I think the idea of cooperative ownership, this is not new. I mean, we have companies that sell outdoor equipment, REI, for example. My sister-in-law is a fisherman in Georgetown. She sells her lobsters through a co-op. This is sort of the model for fishermen up and down the coast of Maine. So, the idea of cooperative ownership is not new. It's just different than what we currently have. And so we need to do the work to make the transition happen.
Right. And I think the more that we can talk about the common sense of it, and again, where the locus of control is, where the power, where literally the power is, and whose hands is it in, and so I think it's an incredible proposal, and unfortunately we're out of time, but I just want to say it goes so fast, but thank you so much to both of you, and and for those of you watching, pay attention to this. This is about putting power, literally power, and figuratively back into the hands of Maine people, back into the hands of you. And this is that opportunity. So pay attention to what happens in the legislature over the next couple of weeks. I imagine it would be helpful if they called their legislator and said, "Hey, yeah, this is a good idea,"
Yeah.
And the governor too. And then when we get to the referendum, we'll have you back on and talk about how people can get involved and make sure that people are, at least when they're voting on the facts. And not the fake news, not the fake information, but really this opportunity. It's so empowering to feel that Maine people might actually have the energy grid and the future of energy in their own hands. So thank you so much for your work and your tireless service to all of us in Maine. We are very grateful. And thanks for watching.
A joy to be
Thank you.
Thanks.